Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. In the unfolding storm of emotional alliances and fractured loyalties, Taylor Hayes finds herself stepping into a role far more complicated than she ever anticipated. As she grows closer to Deacon Sharp, their relationship begins to take shape in a way that feels hopeful and steady, yet it exists under the shadow of unfinished ties that refuse to loosen their grip. Deacon, despite his connection with Taylor, is still technically bound in marriage to Sheila Carter, and that unresolved bond becomes the quiet obstacle standing between them and a fully free future. What Taylor and Deacon want most is a clean break, a chance to move forward without hesitation or history pulling them backward. But just as that possibility starts to feel real, the situation takes a sudden turn when Sheila refuses to sign the divorce papers, insisting she is not being treated fairly. In her eyes, Taylor has effectively taken what was once hers, and if she has lost Deacon, then she deserves something meaningful in return before she lets go completely. That demand becomes the center of tension in the June 18th episode of The Bold and the Beautiful, where Sheila Carter lays out terms that immediately shift the balance of control. She agrees that Deacon and Taylor can have their future together, but only if she is given something she believes reflects fairness for what she has lost. Alongside her unexpected request for friendship with Deacon, Sheila introduces a far more emotionally charged condition that sends shockwaves through every connection involved. If the divorce is to move forward, Taylor will need to intervene on Sheila's behalf and advocate for something deeply personal. Sheila's request is specific and deliberate: monitored visitation with her grandson Hayes Finnegan and carefully supervised time with her son, John Finn Finnegan. In her mind, asking for just 2 days a month is not excessive, but a reasonable opportunity to maintain fragile family ties that she refuses to let disappear completely. However, what Sheila sees as fairness quickly transforms into a looming conflict, especially when the idea reaches Steffy Forrester Finnegan. Taylor, despite her best intentions, knows she is walking into difficult territory, but Sheila is convinced she holds enough influence to make the request happen if it is handled carefully. When Taylor eventually approaches Steffy with the suggestion of allowing Sheila limited, supervised family time, the response is immediate and unyielding. Steffy shuts the idea down without hesitation, refusing to entertain the notion that Sheila should be granted any access at all. Taylor tries to reason with her, emphasizing that the request is only twice a month and arguing that keeping Sheila calm and cooperative might be safer than pushing her into further instability. But Steffy stands firm in her belief that even the smallest opening is dangerous, convinced that once Sheila is allowed in, she will inevitably expand her reach far beyond what was originally agreed. As tensions rise, the emotional divide between Taylor and Steffy deepens, with each woman anchored to a different fear about what Sheila Carter represents. Steffy's conviction hardens further when she interprets Sheila's demands as a form of pressure and manipulation tied directly to the divorce papers, reinforcing her belief that Sheila cannot be trusted around Hayes Finnegan or John Finn Finnegan under any circumstances. To her, the situation is not about compromise but about protection, and any concession feels like a risk she is unwilling to take. Taylor, caught between her relationship with Deacon Sharp and her complicated maternal loyalty to Steffy, may find herself trying repeatedly to soften her daughter's stance, hoping time and reason might wear down her resistance. Yet the question remains whether Steffy's resolve will eventually crack under emotional pressure or whether she will continue to hold the line until Sheila is completely shut out. According to the unfolding spoilers of The Bold and the Beautiful, Steffy initially refuses to budge, but the possibility lingers that, over time, she may reconsider and ultimately deliver the very answer Sheila has been waiting for. Yet even after Steffy's firm rejection, the situation does not settle into peace. Instead, it begins to simmer beneath the surface like a pressure that refuses to release. Taylor finds herself stuck in the middle of two powerful emotional forces, her desire to protect her daughter's boundaries, and her growing hope that Deacon Sharp's future with her might finally be free of Sheila Carter's shadow. Every conversation with Steffi carries an unspoken weight, as if one more argument could either break the tension or deepen the distance between them. Steffi, meanwhile, remains hyper-aware that Sheila's influence has never truly been contained, and the thought of even controlled access to Hayes Finnegan and John Finn. Finnegan keeps her on constant alert. In her mind, this is not a negotiation, but a warning sign she cannot afford to ignore, no matter how reasonable the terms may appear on the surface. And so, the divide between mother and daughter grows sharper, not through anger alone, but through a clash of protection versus compromise that neither is willing to abandon. As this emotional standoff intensifies, Sheila Carter remains at the center of it all, quietly watching the tension she has sparked unfold exactly as she intended. For her, the refusal is not an ending, but a challenge, proof that the door to her family is still there, even if it is only barely cracked open. Deacon, caught in the aftermath, feels the strain of being pulled between Taylor's determination to move forward and the lingering consequences of his marriage to Sheila, a bond that refuses to disappear without resistance. Every delay in the divorce papers becomes more than paperwork. It becomes a reminder that no one in this tangled situation is truly free. And as the bold and the beautiful continues to weave its emotional web, the possibility of compromise, collapse, or unexpected change hangs in the air, leaving all sides standing at a fragile crossroads where one decision could reshape everything they believe about family, loyalty, and forgiveness. The tension continues to build in a way that feels less like a single conflict and more like a slow, emotional storm spreading across every relationship involved. Taylor Hayes begins to realize that her position is far more delicate than she first believed, because every step she takes toward helping Deacon Sharp move forward with the divorce only pulls her deeper into the fractured dynamics between Sheila Carter and the Finnegan family. What once felt like a hopeful bridge toward stability now feels like a narrow path lined with resistance on all sides. Deacon, though grateful for Taylor's support, cannot fully escape the reality that Sheila's conditions have transformed the divorce into something far more complicated than a simple legal separation. The weight of unresolved history presses on him, reminding him that Sheila's hold is not just emotional, but deeply entangled with the lives of those he cares about. And in the middle of it all, Taylor finds herself questioning how much influence she truly has over Steffy Forrester Finnegan, especially when the subject at hand touches her daughter's deepest fears. Steffy's stance, unwavering as ever, becomes a defining force in how the situation unfolds. Every time Taylor attempts to revisit the conversation, hoping for even a slight softening, she is met with the same firm boundary, one rooted in years of distrust and painful history with Sheila Carter. For Steffy, the idea of supervised visitation is not a compromise, but a potential crack in a wall she has spent her entire life building for protection. She cannot see it as harmless or limited, no matter how carefully it is framed. Instead, she views it as the beginning of a return to chaos she has worked relentlessly to keep away from her husband, John Finn Finnegan, and her son, Hayes Finnegan. The emotional intensity of her refusal is not born from stubbornness alone, but from a fear that any allowance, no matter how small, could reopen wounds that never fully healed. This makes Taylor's mission increasingly difficult, as every attempt to advocate for Sheila feels like it risks damaging the trust she shares with her own daughter. Meanwhile, Sheila Carter's silence in the background is anything but passive. Even without directly intervening in every moment, her presence is felt like a persistent shadow stretching over every decision being made. Her refusal to sign the divorce papers continues to serve as leverage, subtly controlling the pace and direction of everyone else's lives. Deacon finds himself increasingly caught between loyalty and liberation, knowing that the life he wants with Taylor cannot fully begin until Sheila's demands are addressed one way or another. And as tensions tighten, the emotional stakes rise even higher, leaving all parties suspended in a fragile balance where cooperation feels distant and conflict feels inevitable. In this ongoing battle of wills and fears, The Bold and the Beautiful pushes every relationship to its edge, leaving viewers with a growing sense that one final decision, whether of mercy, resistance, or compromise, could determine not just the outcome of a divorce, but the future of an entire family network bound together by love, mistrust, and impossible expectations. As the pressure continues to mount, Taylor Hayes finds herself slipping further into a role she never truly asked for, mediator between two worlds that refuse to coexist peacefully. On one side stands Deacon Sharp, whose hope for a clean break from Sheila Carter grows more urgent with every passing day. On the other side stands Steffy Forrester Finnegan, whose boundaries remain immovable, shaped by years of fear, betrayal, and hard-earned vigilance. Taylor's every attempt to bridge the gap feels like walking a tightrope over unresolved history, where even carefully chosen words risk triggering deeper resistance. The emotional strain begins to weigh on her in subtle but undeniable ways, as she realizes that love and loyalty are not always enough to create harmony between people with such opposing truths. What once seemed like a manageable condition for peace now feels like a fragile equation that may never balance. Steffi's resistance continues to define the emotional temperature of the entire situation, and her concerns grow even sharper when the implications of Sheila's demands become impossible to ignore. To Steffy, the idea of Sheila being granted even supervised access to Hayes Finnegan and John Finnegan feels less like a negotiation and more like a threat disguised as compromise. Every detail of Sheila's request becomes a reminder of past chaos, reinforcing Steffi's belief that boundaries exist for survival, not convenience. When Taylor presses again, hoping to soften her stance by emphasizing the limited nature of the visits, Steffy responds with the same unwavering certainty. Once access is granted, control is already lost. This emotional standoff deepens the distance between mother and daughter, leaving Taylor caught in a painful position where understanding both sides does not make the decision any easier. The conflict is no longer just about Sheila. It becomes a test of trust, fear, and the limits of forgiveness within a family already stretched thin. And yet, even as resistance holds firm, the possibility of change lingers quietly in the background like a question no one wants to answer too quickly. Sheila Carter remains the unseen force shaping every decision, her refusal to sign the divorce papers continuing to hold Deacon Sharp's future in suspension. For Deacon, the situation becomes increasingly frustrating as each passing moment delays the life he is trying to build with Taylor and keeps him tethered to a past he is desperate to escape. Taylor, too, begins to understand that no resolution will come easily and that every step forward requires navigating emotional landmines placed long before she entered this complicated dynamic. As The Bold and the Beautiful moves through this unfolding tension, all paths seem to converge toward a single uncertain truth. Either someone will finally bend, or the entire fragile structure holding these relationships together will reach a breaking point where compromise is no longer possible and everything must be redefined from the ground up.